Well, that took way too long, but the hit replay system is now functional. I'll go over why it took so long in just a minute, but for now I want to just demonstrate where we're at. As you can see in the top right, we get a little window whenever a projectile hits a vehicle that shows the path that it took as well as any shrapnel that it spawned. So in normal gameplay where all these line traces are not going to be visible, this is still a way that you can tell what your shots are actually doing to enemy vehicles, because the intricate interior components otherwise makes it feel kind of confusing when sometimes you'll hit a vehicle and nothing seems to happen to them, and sometimes you'll hit a vehicle and they'll just immediately be completely knocked out. But it works for ricochets, and it should also trigger for internal penetrations. So even if you don't spawn any shrapnel or do any damage, you can still see the angle at which it is deflected. And then you can later on determine the thickness of that plate to see if you ever had a chance of pinning it at a different angle. But I like where it's at right now. It can handle multiple projectiles at the same time, and then it only focuses on one vehicle at a time. So if you're using a high rate of fire gun and hit multiple vehicles, it shouldn't get confused by that. That was one of the issues that came up. Geez, I can't aim. The cursor's a bit off. There we go. But it's about where I want it. So now the next step is to actually model internal components and then start doing damage handling. To get this to work, projectiles had to keep track of positions related to actual hits, and it's not as simple as just actually logging the location at every step or every tick, because when the projectile has a ricochet or a penetration, it's not actually moving the mesh around to do that, it's performing line traces to simulate its penetration or ricochet. And then after that's done, the projectile gets a velocity update, so that's where it will actually bounce and go in a different direction, or just continue through and then reduce speed on every step it actually hits a component with thickness. One of the main reasons it needs to be done in this way is because if we ran it in simulation and say between ticks, if the tick rate slows down, the vehicle actually has moved enough to where a hit wouldn't have penetrated, but now will. That's not fair, and that is variable based on what the tick rate is. So instead we just do all the solving the instant. However, to keep it authentic with the projectile's trajectory and velocity, this trace is done from the last position to the current position of the projectile. So really, in an update from position to position, the projectile can go from behind the vehicle to through the vehicle before it has time to do its penetration logic. But that logic is done from the last position to the current position, so it's not getting any sort of advantage in front of it. Now the problem for the replay system is that means sometimes the path history is a lie. And so if we just take it at face value and say replay the last 4 position ticks, it will jump in front of the tank, or sometimes it will start from a position that's not the first position, and there's not a great way to keep track of that lightweight. So instead, the projectile just has its own logic that only reports the effective actual locations. So really, it was just the projectile system need a little bit of a refactoring for consistency, and then once that was patched, the 4th time I rewrote the hit replay system, it worked with some tuning. But that's pretty much it. That's all I've worked on for the past 3 weeks, I think. Next is internal components, so we can actually have the tank respond to getting shot. And from that, all that needs to be done is a little bit of multiplayer replication setup, which has already been more or less accounted for, other than some of the new stuff. And then I think I want to make a little demo. I don't know if this is going to be when I release, because it's going to be super bare bones, and I kind of want to have a few holes and weapons at least before the first demo, but we'll see. If it's at all fun, I'll consider it. I feel a lot more confident on what I'm about to be working on, so I'm going to say I'm going to have that done by the end of this next weekend. If you're at all interested, there is a Discord I'm trying to start up. Eventually somebody's going to join it. It's going to be awkward, but you'll be there, and I'll appreciate that. But regardless, more updates to come soon. Thanks for watching.